Welcome to episode number 4 of the Kansas City Suburbs Showdown. In this series, we pit some of the best suburbs against each other to give you a little bit more insight and to help make that decision of which one is the best for you just a little bit easier. In this episode, we've got surprise, surprise, Overland Park versus one of the most underrated, undervalued suburbs on the Kansas side in the same Johnson County area, Shawnee, Kansas. Let's get started. Part number 1 is all about the location and some of the other differences between the shops, parks, etc. that you'll find in both of these cities. So here they are side by side on the map. You can see that Shawnee is like the western part of the Kansas City Metro. Overland Park is like the central and south part of the Kansas City Metro, and they're kind of a totally different orientation, totally different layout. So here are some of the big differences. Shawnee is closer to bodies of water, which you're pretty far away in Overland Park. Number 2, Shawnee's cut in half by Johnson Drive, which makes getting horizontally across the city very, very easy. And that's also happens to be where all of the shops, restaurants, and new development is taking place, is right along Shawnee Mission Parkway. You're also closer to the Legends, which is an outlet mall in Kansas City, Kansas. You've got the Kansas City Speedway there. You've also got Sporting Kansas City Stadium, and of course, the Kansas City Monarchs, our semi-professional baseball team that used to be the T-Bones. Their baseball stadium is out there as well. So you've got all of that at the Legends, 10 to 15 minutes away if you live in Shawnee. If you live in Overland Park, it's going to be quite a bit farther. And of course, one of the last big differences is that in Shawnee, you are pretty close to Lawrence, Kansas. You're crossing the Kansas City River. It's going to take about 25, maybe 30 minutes, depending on where you're coming from. If you're coming from Overland Park, it's going to take darn near 45 minutes, maybe even more, depending on the time of day and how much traffic there is. Now, some of the differences for Overland Park are that it is just bigger, and we'll cover this and break it down in terms of the population and why Overland Park is a little bit more, I can't quite say hustle and bustle, but it's just more dense than Shawnee is. Overland Park also has more highways. Shawnee just has 2 cutting through it vertically. Overland Park has quite a few, which can make getting around, at least if you're new to the area, a little bit more challenging at first until you really learn the lay of the land. Now, we did mention shopping for Shawnee, so we've got to do the same for Overland Park. You've got the Oak Park Mall. You've got downtown Overland Park that runs along Metcalf. You've also got Town Center, which is kind of at the border of Leawood and Overland Park. You've got Prairie Fire, and then Overland Park is expanding south and farther south. So you've got several different places to shop up and down the city is basically what I'm trying to say. Part number 2 is the history, but I promise it's not the boring stuff. It's the important things that dictate the feel of each of these cities and also where they're slated to be developed. What does their growth trajectory look like? So Shawnee predates the existence of Kansas. It's quite a bit older. It used to be farmland, and during the Civil War, it was actually a huge agricultural hub for the Midwest. It also, a lot of families, a lot of men that lived in Shawnee ended up fighting in the Battle of Westport, which is known as the Gettysburg of the Midwest. Now, if you go on Zillow today, you'll see a lot of that farmland kind of remains intact. A lot of the homes that were built in like the mid-1900s that are 1,800 square feet, some of those homes are sitting on like 14 acres of land, which is just crazy. Now, formerly, Shawnee was established under the name Gum Springs in like 1856. It was rebranded, we'll say, to the city of Shawnee in the early 1900s, and it spread west and west and further west over time. And it's basically reached its border, which is the Kansas River. So there's not really any room for expansion, but what we will see is all of those old plots of farmland where there's a small little home on them and they've got acres and acres and acres. Those are being bought up by developers, and basically they're building entire subdivisions, bunch of new homes there. In Overland Park, the situation is quite a bit different because while Shawnee's been around since like the 1850s, Overland Park was formally established in the 1960s. And it wasn't until then that Overland Park went from the boundary of 435 to like 186th Street. It's like doubled in size since then. The growth trajectory is crazy. So while we're seeing older land be redeveloped in Shawnee, we're seeing raw land be developed for the first time in many parts of South Overland Park. Now, the history of both of these cities dictates how dense, how quiet they both feel today. And I can tell you that some parts of Shawnee, quite a few more parts of Shawnee than Overland Park, are going to offer a more quiet, small town feel with a little bit more nature than you can find in a lot of different parts of Overland Park. And even though this is a small difference, I want to give you like the population density numbers just to give you a little bit more context. So if you look at the square miles, the footprint of the size of Overland Park, and if you look at how many people live there, which is close to 200,000 people, the population density is about 2,600 people for every square mile. In the city of Shawnee, which is a smaller footprint and even smaller amount of people, you've got about 1,600 people for every square mile. So over 1,000 people less per each square mile of the city, you're going to get a little bit more small town feel. It's going to be less congested, less crowded. And of course, you don't even have as many highways as you would in Overland Park. So if that's something that you're looking for, that would be an upper hand that we can go ahead and award to the city of Shawnee. Really quick interruption. If you're enjoying the video so far, do me a huge favor and hit that like button below. Subscribe for future videos just like this about moving to the Kansas City suburbs. And if you're looking for a home in the best neighborhood and want to get a really good deal on it and answers to all the specific questions that I know you must have, I'd love to set up a time to talk and create a clear roadmap to get you into that home. So all my contact information is below. We'll talk a little bit more at the end of this video. Let's get on to the next part. Part number 3 is about the schools, and it's one of the most competitive matchups that we've seen yet. So there are 2 main school districts in each of these cities. There's the older part of the city, both in Overland Park and Shawnee, the parts of the cities that are closer to downtown Kansas City. Those are served by the Shawnee Mission School District. And here's a picture of what that looks like on the map. The Shawnee Mission School District, it's really highly rated, but it is not rated higher than the other 2 districts in these different cities. So we'll break that down in just a second. Great schools. I wouldn't decide based on ratings. I'd decide based on the programs, the home prices in that school district, and a host of other factors. But in these areas of town, since they're a little bit older, the homes are a little bit older as well. And some of these neighborhoods, like a Prairie Village, which also falls in the Shawnee Mission School District and is just north of Overland Park, seeing a lot of teardowns and rebuilds of new construction homes. And I'm willing to bet money on it that we'll see a bunch of that make its way to North Overland Park as Prairie Village continues to be developed and redeveloped and redeveloped. And I bet eventually it'll make its way into Shawnee. Now, if you go to Central and South Overland Park, you're falling in the Blue Valley School District, which is highly rated as one of the best in the entire country. And the homes here are going to be a little bit newer because this part of the city was only developed after the 1960s. And the farther south you go, the newer the homes get. And the same is true in Shawnee, although Shawnee falls in the DeSoto School District. Here's the big difference. According to niche.com, Blue Valley takes that #1 spot. The DeSoto School District takes that #2 spot. But even more important than that is that the Blue Valley District is quite a bit bigger. In fact, it has 5 high schools, I believe, serving the entire district. And I'd imagine that they'll have to open another one soon in the next decade or so because they're having to open more and more elementary schools every 3 to 5 years. However, if you go into West Shawnee in the DeSoto School District, they have 1 high school. I think you see where we're going with this, which is the DeSoto School District seems to offer a much more small town feel than the Blue Valley School District, while both are very highly rated. Part number 4 is the cost of living, and there's a clear winner in this one, but it's not by a huge margin. Shawnee. Your money is just going to go a little bit farther. The Blue Valley School District, some of those newer homes certainly drive up the cost of living in Overland Park. So here's what that looks like compared on the map. You can see that Shawnee is a little bit lighter of a shade than Overland Park, and that's pretty much what you can expect, especially when it comes to home prices, which we'll cover next. Now here's a chart that'll show a line-by-line breakdown of all of the costs, and this one alleges that the price difference is around 15% for the median home prices. But if you look at all of the other prices, it's pretty comparable. It's just the homes that are going to be a little bit more expensive in that Blue Valley School District. Part number 5, final part of the video, the home prices and the big difference in the real estate market. So before I tell you the exact dollar per square foot difference in Overland Park versus Shawnee, both for newer and older homes, let's break a couple things down. First is the typical home value in Shawnee, according to Zillow, which is about $375,000. In Overland Park, it's about $50,000 more and about $425,000. The biggest 2 differences, number 1, here's an example of some homes that you'll see in Shawnee that pop on the market every once in a while. 1,800 square feet, almost 15 acres of land. There are a lot of those still out there. And as a result of this, the second big difference difference is that with new construction homes, there are a lot more in Overland Park, and they're all condensed into one spot, what I call the new homes corridor. Along 175th Street, you'll see all of the new home communities. When it comes to Shawnee, the western part of Shawnee that's being more developed and is a little bit newer, you'll see a couple there, but for the most part in Shawnee, you'll see new homes spread throughout the entire city, and it's because of big pieces of land like what you just saw that are about 15 acres that'll be eventually subdivided and turn into full-blown new home communities. Now, here's the exact dollar per square foot difference for new homes and old homes between Overland Park and Shawnee. First are new homes. This is in Shawnee. You can see they're hovering around $228 a square foot, and of course there was 1 month where there were $223. That was after interest rates hiked a little bit, so I think it's safe to say that the average is about $228. This is $39 cheaper per square foot than Overland Park, which is sitting around the 270s. Now, if we took that $39 difference per square foot of new construction and we times it by 3,000 square feet, that would be a savings of about $117,000 just by buying a new home in Shawnee compared to buying a new home in Overland Park. And of course, I had to add that. I can't do that math in my head, but that big difference gets a little bit smaller when it comes to older homes. Now, here's what that difference looks like with older homes in Shawnee. You can see we're hovering around 167 to 182, and that's kind of the range that you'll see. Well, that is only $15 cheaper, less than half of the savings that you get with a new home. So here's what that looks like in Overland Park. They're hovering between 192 and the upper 190s. So $15 per square foot difference for older homes and nearly $40 per square foot difference for newer homes. So there you have it. Shawnee, definitely more historic, a little bit more of a small town feel, definitely less dense of a population, more affordable home prices, and of course lots of room for redevelopment throughout the city. In Overland Park, you've got the really highly rated schools, and you're going to have a lot more of those schools to choose from, and even though it costs a little bit more, you're going to have shopping amenities up and down the city, and a little bit more of them than you'll have in Shawnee. So hopefully this video helped. If you enjoyed it, if you learned something new, hit that like button for me, subscribe for future videos like this, and if you like my style, if you think we'd be a good fit personality-wise, let's set up a time to talk so we can find you the best home in the Kansas City suburb that checks off all of your boxes. So all my contact information is below. Give me a call, text, email. We'll get it on the schedule, and that way I can contextualize, I can make all of this information specific to you and really answer those questions that I know everybody's got. So thank you for watching the video. I'll see you on the next one.